Hello, everybody. So today's going to be kind of a short day, a little on the shorter side compared to some of the lectures. A few things to cover though. This week's mostly about cybersecurity, and cybersecurity has a lot to do with definitions. We saw a little bit of that the other day. There's all of those. What do we look at the other day? Malware and scams, things to be aware of. Scams, especially, that's something you want to keep up on maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Make sure you look at Google, do a quick Google search to see what scams are out there. That way you're more aware of them, easier to follow. But a big part of cybersecurity is educating other people. So there's that particular field has lots of definitions, and especially in an introduction class, it's just lots of definitions. But we got a couple other things to go over as well. I'll go ahead and add this up. I guess I'll start with a little point about color things. Did I go to the wrong Zoom call? I should check that because there's usually people here. Right? Informatics 109. Yeah, that's this last. Okay. Usually the engineers here are waiting whenever it starts. So one thing I wanted to talk about was the follow-up from last week's discussion board. I put that on there to kind of segue into this little something I like to discuss about that, or at least put the idea in your mind, not getting into details, and it fits nicely with cybersecurity. So last week's discussion board was about graphical representations of data. Right? Nobody wants to read the large charts of numbers. We want to see the pictures to go with them. And there's sort of there's another thing that comes along with that. So there's the general representation. I'll just open Excel. I think I'm signed into it so recently. But yeah, I'm signed in, so I can use regular Excel here. So if I just quickly make some numbers, 1, 2, 3. So labels on one. So random column. So we got a bunch of numbers, some data set, and we can come over here and insert a chart. No surprises there. What does it recommend? Recommends a bar chart. It's easier, a lot easier to see what's going on with that data from the pictures than the table, tabular format. That part's obvious. But that generic one that popped up there is a good example of what I was wanting to get into. Is kind of a boring graph, right? Some blue stuff, nothing real fancy. And there's subtleties that can be worked in here. Just making that orange makes it seem different, right? And just the feel that comes along with the color blue to the color orange. So a lot of that stuff. It's getting into color theory. Everybody heard of that before? It's a very large field of psychology. Might be worth looking into basic color theory, the effects colors have on us. Things like that can also be worked in to influence the people who are going to look at the graph. So not just the graph itself. Maybe instead of orange, those are both orange color. This is just take it to the next one. Full color. Let's go with bright red. Oh, yes, in olive. I just like olive that way. Fill them all with bright red. Seeing the red bars on there seems very different because we have certain impressions about red, right? And little things like that can be used to influence the people that are going to be looking at your data. Certain things you may have heard about red and yellow. Most fast food places have red and yellow in their logo because those colors make people hungrier. or if you're hungry, if you're already hungry, red and yellow are more appealing. So if you want to convince somebody of some people of something, and you know the meeting is happening right before lunch, and an 11 o'clock meeting, so everybody's going to be getting hungry, ready for you to finish up the slide deck so that they can go and get lunch. If you put a lot of reds and yellows in the charts, they're going to take better to that, just from basic color theory. Color theory is not the only one. Like fonts, the straighter lines and curve, like how straight or curved the line is, little decorative points like serifs. Not into the decorative fonts that are all fancy little pictures themselves, but just little touches. Some things are slightly curved. So not even getting into that, but like the thin font versus big bold one. Those little subtleties, how sharp the corners are versus rounded, those things can influence people. Making the graph look really nice. Humans are a very visual species. That's why the chart's better to begin with. There's some nice presets in here with 3D versions. This get in there, make it look really nice, put some like high gloss colors on there or something. I don't see any that have big, bright, shiny colors. I just have to do it over here. Or probably effects somewhere. Yeah, add some like shadows to them. Side. Shadows laying behind, so it looks a little more three-dimensional. A lighter shadow. Oh, not a lighter shadow color. Some sort of tinting to it. That'll look better. Making things kind of glow a little, and making it look really, really nice is going to appeal to people, regardless of what it's representing. Yeah, I guess the word, depending on how it's being used, the words influence or manipulate could be used. So if you have some data that's not great for the point you want to support, or I guess maybe for the point your managers want to support, if the data is not great for it, you put it in a chart and make it look better, and then people will take better to it regardless of what it is. They're not going to pause and think about the numbers behind the picture. You're going to be like, oh, that's a much better picture. Do a couple side by side ones. I'll do 10 more numbers down here. 1, 2. Oh, yeah, that one's going to keep changing because I just use it random. So maybe a different data set, something with 8 numbers, that'll work. And again, today, numbers. Very basic one. And we have to present the data, and we certainly don't want to lie about the data because that's a different matter altogether, right? We have to give people the real data, but the way we give it to them can make a big difference, right? Like the data that doesn't go so well for our claim, put in something like that bottom chart, just the most basic default one. Maybe don't even bother to change the chart title, leave chart title on there. This doesn't matter at all. All those subtleties can they can be used to influence people. So keep things like that in mind. I'm not saying do that, just sharing the knowledge. That stuff exists. We know it works. It will have a big effect. I saw some recently. I was at a meeting where some of that showed up. There was one of the data that wasn't so great for the point that the higher ups wanted to make was the most basic chart. They changed it. The other chart was also on, But the other chart had like three-dimensional rounded stuff and little pictures and emojis, smiley emojis in the title and all sorts of stuff to make it look better. Just to influence people's perception of that. So that stuff is out there. If you ever need to do that, it's there. But also, I guess more importantly, is watch out for that. Whenever somebody's giving you presentations, supposed to be database stuff, and they show you some slide decks, and some of the charts look really, really nice, and some of them look really, really lousy. Keep in mind that can be used to influence people. Or depending on how it's being used, the words influence or manipulate would fit. Synonyms for each other, just the connotations that go with it. Kind of same thing. The humans are a visual species, so when the data is presented in a better form, people will take to it better. And then all this stuff about color theory, it's good to know that stuff anyway. What colors impact each other. And one last point before finishing this up, also remember, if you're going to be in a situation where you're going to make a lot of charts and graphs, remember to be aware of the color blindness patterns. You've seen those things. Oh yeah, how to use colorblind friendly palettes. Because some colors we would not want to put next to each other, like people wouldn't be able to see the difference. That's not a manipulation point. That's just being nice to people. This side's pretty good. It shows what it looks like to different people, so you can see some stuff going to end up missing from pictures. But people see different things. I've seen pictures like this a lot, but I've also heard experts say that no human would see grayscale. No human sees only grayscale. We do see colors, just see colors. See colors differently. There's a nice little chart. If you're looking for some nice bright colors and putting them together, some people are going to see just greens and blues from that whole palette there. And if information is conveyed that way, the information is going to be lost. So keep that in mind. That reminds me of another one. For those points I was just making, good versus bad coloring for charts and graphs. If you Google something like this, good versus bad coloring for charts and graphs, you will see some graphic design stuff, and they put them side by side. Again, just the neutral presentation of the knowledge. What's labeled as bad is something that will influence the people that are looking at your data. But obviously, if they're presenting it publicly, they can't directly state that. So they label it good and bad. Like people will be indifferent to it versus it will actually influence what people are doing. Just don't have some like, yeah, so things like this. To make the blue stand out, make everything else the same color, and then it just pops off the page. But maybe you don't want that particular data point to stand out. It's the most important data point. It's the one that everybody's going to be talking about for days and days and days after the meeting. But being way tall up like that isn't something that supports the claim you want to make. So you just kind of blend that into the background. So use lots of colors and it just blends into the. So this is how we get that information. But bless you. Showing the chart directly. If you want to hide the data, just give them the table. Don't even make a chart because nobody's going to read it. They'll be like, oh, they definitely took the time to look up the data, so they must know what they're talking about. Pie charts can be deceptive. Pie charts are for things that have percentages. And if percentages don't make sense in that situation, you probably shouldn't be using them. This one looks like it's approaching a good one where the split point where we want to get into a donut chart. Everybody know the difference when we want to use pie and when we want to use donut charts? I think I can annotate that here. I have a circle. Draw a circle. Yep. And where's my color? White. Oh, that's not a white circle. Bless you. So the donut chart is when we take out the middle of the pie chart. So when there's lots of slices of that pie, all those points in the middle start to get cluttered. If the data fits nicely into a pie chart, there's lots and lots of parts. You want to switch over to a donut chart and get rid of that cluttered part in the middle and convey the information that way. Or vice versa, since we're talking about how the representation and how the visualization there omits things. Yeah, bad colored bars, so it stands out. Oh, this is another one for representing data, and this is the pollution emitters in the world, the top 5 countries, and then everybody else put together. It's like, look, US isn't bad. We're less than every other country in the world except for 4. So be aware of those manipulations. Those things exist. Sequential coloring to help convey information. Not everything should be in order. People are going to grab this. What is this? This is number of clicks. I'm not sure what the data is they were presenting, but not everything should be in order. People will start looking for patterns where there's not a pattern and think that things are correlated because it looks like music and horror can somehow connected here just because of where they fall into the pattern that sit up there. Y'all can read things like that. Way too much clutter there. It's like, okay, lots of colors. Nobody's going to take the time to figure out what that means. There is very rarely a use for 3D graphs unless you have 3-dimensional data. If there's not 2 horizontal axes, if it doesn't perfectly split up into 2 2-dimensional graphs, it probably shouldn't be 3-dimensional data. 2 horizontal axes that affect the same vertical axes. Otherwise, well, I guess if you want to kind of hide the stuff, make it not seem so bad, make it look like it blends in, all the extra stuff, make it hide. That yellow one back there in the back doesn't seem so to stand out quite so much with everything on there, but it's clearly way taller than everything else around. Scale, there's lots of stuff. Be aware of that. I just wanted to kind of mention the point and make sure you're all aware of that. Like, it is something that is often used to influence people or manipulate people. They're synonyms for each other. So depending on the motives for why they're doing that, it shows up. Or color theory has a big impact, just the color choice. We saw that with the first thing, the same chart in blue versus the same chart in red. If we take those numbers differently, the big ones in blue don't seem so bad, and the big ones in red just seem worse, and the little ones in red seem good because of what red means to people. Keep things in mind like that. It kind of relates to cybersecurity. What last time we talked about the other day, penetration testing, ethical hacking. If you're studying that, you're going to learn those things. It's not saying go out and apply those hacking skills all the time. Right? Just imparting the knowledge. It exists. Be aware of it. Use it if you need it. Watch out for it. If other people are using it, watch out for other people using it against you. That sort of thing. So in college, it's just sort of the indifferent presentation of the knowledge. Before we get into the list of definitions for today, there's a little spiel I like to give in every single class, so it seems like a good time to do that. And well, if you're sitting in this classroom, you're at least considering an IT career. You might be thinking about some other stuff and checking out ID, but it's one of the options if you're in this room, right? So that means you're here learning a skill set that will basically have you sitting at a desk for a full-time job for a working career. That is a terrible thing to do to the human body. The human body is a very dynamic thing. I'm going to skip over diet and exercise. I've already talked about that. You do 40 stationary hours a week. There's some bad effects for that. Getting steps in is really good. Why, as soon as technology existed that could count our steps, it pretty much showed up on everything that would be in our pockets or attached to our bodies, and something to tell us how many steps we're taking. Make sure we get enough. Just that bare minimum. But aside from those big ones that you've probably heard a lot, there's other things. The human body is just very dynamic. So somebody that's working construction for an entire working career, parallel to you working in an IT career sitting at a desk, they're going to have a lot more little injuries along the way, right? A lot more cuts, pinches, small injuries. But by the time you reach retirement age, they're going to be in much better shape than you will, because their body has been moving. It's been in use the whole time. The human body is designed to do a lot of things, but sitting still in a chair is not one of them. But there are things we can do to improve it. Just the tools we use, these basic ones, keyboard, big flat surface. It's a terrible shape. It does not match our body at all, right? Let me grab one out of the closet. That way I can hold them up in front of the laptop camera like it's zoomed in. I'm gonna plug stuff, try to figure out where it goes, plug it back in. So this shape of keyboard, completely flat. Laptop might almost been better, but my hand is a long way from flat. Everything's laid out on the grid, nice and even. But again, my hand is a long way from nice and even. There's different spacing between every one of our fingers. They're different lengths, and other little things, but the way we push the keyboard can cause damage. It does make a difference to make sure you're like pushing downward as much as possible. Keys help with that, kind of like the piano thing. Pianos are a notorious example. If you don't want to swipe down like that, you put everything into just one knuckle of your hand. That knuckle is going to get a lot more damage. But one of the big things, the nerves in our hand run through a little tube called the carpal tunnel. So every signal from your hand connects to your brain, but going through the same tunnel, same little tube. And if that tube gets damaged, my understanding is that your brain just always gets a pain signal. It's not enough to get disability or anything, but 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, your brain is receiving a signal that says your hand is in pain. Little things we can do. So the flat shape is a big contributor to that. So you might have seen little things that we can rest our armrests that raise it up just a little. And that forces this, you kind of see in my fingers, if laying flat and he pushing down, most of the movement is in the fingers. If the arm's raised up, that movement kind of goes all the way back up here. If you're coming down at an angle and follow, the motion follows all the way through the muscles of your arm down to the fingertips. It helps to prevent damage to that thing. But there's other things, that flat shape. If I hold my hands out there in a flat shape, like be typing on a keyboard, that's a very unnatural position, right? Have to force our hands into that. If we relax, our hands do this. So this is a much better shape for our hands to be held in for long periods of time. So let's start with the keyboard. There's other little things. You want to be looking straight at a monitor. You don't want your neck bent backwards or bent forwards. You don't want extra pressure there. That'll add up over time. Little things like that. I was going to jump on here and look for ergonomic keyboard. So ergonomic, you've probably heard the word. Generally refers to what's good for the human body, what's best for the human body, and it's very popular in business because it improves productivity. People can work better. If it's better for the bodies, they're not going to get exhausted as quick and be more productive. But if you're heading into IT, pretty much a guaranteed get desk job, except when you have to stand up and go plug a loose cable back in or something. It makes a big difference in those long-term effects that we get from sitting at the desk. Ergonomic keyboard. So instead of the flat ones, go to images. There's probably some pictures here where they have some at a good angle. Those are really nice. I was going to start with just basic ones. As you can kind of see the angle on that one there. See how it swoops up and then it fits that in that relaxed position for our hands around that. Some others, this one takes it to the extreme, kind of separates it, splitting the keyboard up so that we can put each hand in a natural spot for it. Makes a big difference. The split ones, there's lots and lots of them out there. But most of the best ones follow some sort of curvature like this. It's a very three-dimensional thing, so photographers seem to not do a great job photographing a three-dimensional thing. This one kind of shows a lot. You see where it's curved in, so our hands almost rested on something raised up higher, but still in that natural shape. Little things like that make a big difference over time. And well, some of these have price value. Some of them are very, very expensive. Definitely sounds rough when you're a student, but remember when you're out there making really good IT money, the IRS is going to want a great big chunk of that. And something like a really nice keyboard, if you're an IT person, is definitely a business expense. So it's an itemized deduction. Comes right off the taxes you owe for business expenses. So when you're out there making really good IT money, the expensive stuff is nice. For those itemized deductions on taxes. There's quite a bit of them. Look through lists like that. They're not all expensive. Here's one for $20. That's comparable to a decent keyboard at Walmart. If you go to Walmart, there's probably a $10 one that you wouldn't want to use, but $20, $30 is just the normal cheap flat keyboard. So the ergonomic ones start at comparable prices and then obviously get better. But if you're planning on doing this as a career, right, all the time, day after day after day, week after week, you're going to spend a lot of time at a keyboard. So something to look into. Anybody ever seen the radial keyboards? There's a bumblebee. There it is. This one's quite a bit different. The biggest difference is all those other ones were designed by engineers. This is what happens if you ask orthopedic doctors what the best shape for the keyboard for a human hand is. So a large collection of orthopedic of orthopedic experts, right, medical experts in the human hands, and with some engineers, and figured out what the best possible shape for our fingers are. So, like for a data entry position, and if you're just sitting there typing things into the database 40 hours a week, you're definitely going to develop some arthritis at a fairly young age. So having something like that would make a big difference. Obviously, you have to retype, but when you look at that, you can see the shape of the human hand right there in it. And when I've asked before, most people say they can look at that and see exactly what to do on it. It would just take some practice. You can see the shape of the human hand there and figure out where your hands go. That would be the optimal shape, but if you got used to working with that, it would be hard to go to a regular keyboard. So there's obviously a trade-off for that. It's not the only thing. These are a great example. How many years ago pulling up? Let me stop screen share so the video shows up big. I can't even hold this and use it with the same hand posture. In order to hold it with one hand, I would have to move my hand in order to actually get it to something usable. When the engineer originally invented these, he never intended for this to be the shape. All he thought about was the internal stuff. Has anybody seen the original mouse? Not the one on Macintosh in the 80s. That was a mass produced thing. The one, it belongs to the Smithsonian, but it's the first mouse, so it travels the world constantly. It's a big deal, this. But the one in the Smithsonian, it belongs to the Smithsonian. It stopped at basically every technology museum in the world as on a non-stop tour. Original mouse. So the late 60s. There it is. So he had the idea, and he had this was a paperclip holder in his desk, and it was the right size to hold the equipment for the idea. So he just dumped out the paper clips and put the electronic components inside of it. Took it to a conference, showed it. Didn't go so well in the late 60s. Those days of punch cards. So people said that someday computers might get there, but not in 1968. Wasn't much use for it, but that was just a random choice to put it in that box shape. He was an engineer. He probably knew at the time that was not a good shape for the human hand. It was just convenient. But we never really left that back box shape. When Apple started including mouses, they just left it in the box because, well, at that time, the plastic molding was a little bit more expensive than it is today. So doing a fancy shape in 1979 to 1981 would have cost a fortune. And the company did not have enough to pay for a fancy shape at the time. And then from those original boxes, the box shape just never left us. But I was doing a second ago, to hold this in one hand, you can't hold it in one hand in the usable position. And again, it's a forced position to hold it there. You whether using it or holding it, we're laying our hand on something to do that. Right? How many other things in your life do you lay your hand on top of it in order to use that tool? There's a few, but usually if we're doing it from the top, we're pushing buttons, right? Which is on a mouse, but not the whole thing. So pushing buttons are a subset of that. It's very unnatural. And again, have to hold our hand in that flat, unnatural shape. But if it just relaxes, it goes like this. So that's a much better, something in that shape would be much better for our hands. Those are called vertical mouse. Anybody ever seen those? Oops. Oh, you can see it nice in that first picture right there. It's that natural relaxed shape. And the buttons are over on the side. So you just put your hand in the natural shape. You're still using the same fingers on the buttons and stuff. You can definitely hold that and use it with the same hand posture. It fits right in the hand, so those are good ones. They're really extended. The thumb ones were a recent invention, like right before. Usually there's pictures of thumb ones. They happened right before the pandemic. So they didn't spread around the office. They basically went on sale right before the pandemic, so people didn't see their other folks in the same office as them using those ring ones. That's where it's listed. This were, yeah, so something like this. And that looks like the shape we would just naturally pick something up in, right? If you pick up a rock, that's probably how you hold, ever since you were a little kid, the way you would hold your hand to pick up a rock. So I went with that shape. And you have a button underneath and your thumb doing all the stuff. It's kind of like a trackball. Trackballs are also quite popular, especially with graphic designers. It's a little bit slower, but the mouse is stationary. There's usually rubber feet on it so that it doesn't move, and your thumb moves the little ball. There are two sets of muscles on the human body that will never get exhausted. The joints will wear out, but our hips and our thumbs, the muscles will never get tired. Those muscles like lack the signal to tell the rest of your body that it's tired. You use your thumb and your hips forever. Not the bones. The bones and the joints will definitely wear out because that's right. They're joints, they're bones rubbing up against each other. But the muscles will never get, those two sets of muscles will never get tired. So something like this, where your hand's just sitting there and you're using one of those muscles, and it's usually a very subtle movement, so you're not doing hard stuff that you're going to hurt the joint on your thumb. They're a little bit slower usually, or you can move them fast. If you use them, some people think about it, go back and swing on them pretty quick and do what you used to it. I think some people use them for games. Only a couple people use them for games. I think they were just determined to figure out a way how to. It's usually for something with more precise control, like graphic designers, because it moves slower and much more controlled, and you get real fine movement on it. That's also another good shape for the human hand. A few different ones. Like the main keyboards. I started this off by talking about just sitting at a desk, right? And turn this camera off. Right. I glanced at the TV and noticed that camera was still on. And that big square rectangular thing. Is there anything in the natural world that is this shape? And we have to force ourselves into that shape. Y'all know, usually just in the length of our classroom and the length of our class, we'll take a break today because we're sitting at a desk. And it's like, oh, 3 hours of sitting at a desk, we need a break and then leave early. Right? That's a very rough shape. There are better shapes. You may know what the best shape for human body to work in is. What's that? Something like that. Yes, very similar to that. So it's called zero gravity. So we look at zero gravity workstation. This position. So laid on your back, looking upward. So gravity is not pulling you down to your feet, it's pulling you. The pull is spread across your entire body. There's not pressure at the bottom of your back. And people with desk jobs, you often hear them complain about back pain because they're sitting in a chair. And draw a picture. I have the pen right in front of me. So people are sitting at a chair like this, which means gravity is pulling straight down their back. And there's a point of pressure right there at the curve of the back. And eventually that's going to get old. Standing desks help a lot with that. Standing, you gotta have comfortable shoes, but that makes some really, really comfortable shoes. Don't want to use a standing desk with cheap shoes. it makes it easier to get around and do stuff and get a little more activity. But this is zero gravity is the best position for humans to work in. These here are not cheap, but again, it'd be a business expense. So like company cars, something that would come off your take big chunks off your taxes for 20 years, every year for 20 years. The workstations, notice I searched for workstation, not desk. Grants, typically, if you're going somewhere where you would end up to get a grant money, grants typically don't pay for furniture, but grants do pay for workstations. So just that name right there that would show up on the receipt changes how you can buy it. Smoking desk here, these are awesome. All that stuff is automated. It folds up into the back of the chair and you sit down and hit a button and it rolls out. And then there's zero gravity, so they roll back to that nice position afterwards. If you have something like this, the split ergonomic keyboard, and get a really nice position, not wear your body out. The optimal stuff, those are very expensive. That makes this one probably not so expensive. Oh, wait, that one is. Yeah, I'll look for zero gravity chairs. Workstation is probably a very expensive chair. Actually, if I call it a desk, so the grant money wouldn't pay for it, they probably have some cheaper ones here. Nope, it's showing a lot of the same ones. They look very cool. Maybe this one's doesn't have a price on it, but there are some that are not a lot less expensive. You get chairs, which is little tables, not all the fancy stuff. And then you're in that really good position. Maybe look for a chair. There's probably a good picture on there of that. Okay, this one. That is a professional model. If we sat in a chair that leaned back that far, we would be panicking. So I'm sure she did. It took a couple tries before they got some good photos, even from somebody whose job is to sit and smile no matter what. The first time you sit there, you're going to panic a little bit, but that's a better position you can see from where gravity would apply. Gravity is pulling evenly from out throughout the body, so we don't really have any pressure points like that lower back problem that comes with desk jobs. Yeah, first time sitting in a chair like that, definitely gonna. There's no support behind it. It's just the chair molds to the shape of this thing. Definitely going to panic a little first time you sit in a chair that way, but that's the best shape for the human body to work in. So if you can get something like that, or the closer to that you can get, the better it will be for your body. I was bringing it up. I bring it up in every class I teach, because if you're in the class here and you're at least considering an IT degree, some sort of desk job. And if you're considering an IT degree, but haven't decided yet, the other options are probably also desk jobs. And if you're thinking about an IT career, you're probably not debating it against a painter. Something that'll be to keep in mind. I like to talk about it everywhere because if you're in this classroom, you're heading down a pathway to sit at a desk. It pays really, really well. And that equipment can, especially looks expensive as a student, but remember it's a business expense. So when you're making really good IT money, right? When you're making enough money that they stop taking Social Security out, because you're already past that, then you end up paying like the IRS wants 36, 37% of your income for taxes. So it's really nice to have some good itemized deductions and that stuff. Things like expensive desk, expensive workstations, and expensive chairs, and a $400 ergonomic keyboard to write up as a business expense. Keep things like that in mind, but mostly the ergonomic stuff. right? Just, well, we're sitting in the classroom, right? We've been sitting here for 45 minutes, so right now you all have the personal experience going through your body right this moment of how bad sitting at the desk is. So keep things like that in mind. I just like to give that spiel in every class I teach, because, like I mentioned about construction, somebody that works construction alongside you, work for the same number of years, they're gonna have a lot more little injuries along the way. But by retirement age, you sitting at a desk, you might be stuck in a chair. Or is that person in the construction still go jogging every day if they feel like it? The human body is a dynamic thing, and it's designed to do a lot of stuff, but sitting at a desk is not one of those things. What's next? Oh, the definition. So looks like that was about 45 minutes. Might be a good time for a break. Break sound good. And then the other half of the cybersecurity definition lecture should take us about 45 minutes to go through. Be fairly quick. But it's not that little lecture. We got to go through those sometimes. Not the most interesting ones, but let's go and take 10 minutes. My laptop's at 146, so we'll get back to it at 156. See y'all in a moment.